Week 3 of the XFL is officially here. And looking back over the last 2 weeks, we've had some ups, we've had some downs, some good play, some bad play. But overall, by and large, this league has offered us some exciting professional football in the month of February. But most importantly, this league has offered us more. Yeah, if you're an American wife, a significant other out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's another season of fantasy football to keep every dad, every husband, heck, every wife out there occupied all weekend long. But I've got good news. You've come to the right place. This is No Huddle Fantasy Sports, and I'm helping you get through your weekend faster, build winning lineups. That's right, we're talking about Week 3 daily fantasy football for the XFL. Top plays, picks, favorite players, guys that I think you can build into winning lineups this weekend. So if that sounds interesting to you, sit back, relax, let's talk some XFL Week 3 DFS. Hey guys, and welcome back to No Huddle Fantasy Sports. As always, thank you for tuning into the channel, finding this video in particular. This, of course, is our weekly daily fantasy football picks video for the XFL. We're talking week 3 right now, and it is Saturday around 8 a.m. on the East Coast right now as I put this video out to you guys. We do have some final injury reports. We're now understanding who's in, who's out for the weekend slate of games. All good information, and I think now we can make a final push to put out some lineups, some good lineups for the weekend. One little disclaimer, I did mention last week I would be trying to split up these longer videos, try to put out a more data-driven, stat-driven video earlier in the week to kind of preface all the plays and all the picks, and then do a separate DFS picks video later in the week, and this would be kind of a shortened version of what we're talking about now. Haven't done that yet, so this video is similar in length to last week, a little bit longer. I do apologize. There's just not a lot of data right now in the XFL, at least enough to be comfortable to put out to you guys. So stick with me one more week here as we get through the little bit longer videos, but I do promise you all the information you need is contained in this video. It's a one-stop shop. No Huddle Fantasy Sports, giving you everything you need as quickly as possible. So without wasting too much more time, let's take a quick look at the slate of games for this upcoming weekend's action. Of course, I already mentioned today is Saturday, 2/22/2020. Our first game is Houston playing at Tampa Bay. That's a PM game. Houston, of course, one of the better teams in the league, 2-0 right now, playing again in Tampa Bay, one of the worst, especially on offense, losing their quarterback Murray right now, running a bunch of different quarterbacks, just not a good situation in Tampa Bay. Anemic offense, just a really bad right now. Of course, we have the later game here at 5 p.m. Dallas playing at Seattle. Both of these teams coming off of their first win of the season in week 2, but I do think there's a significant difference between both teams. Dallas getting a little bit more healthy on offense, especially with the return of a healthy Landry Jones. Seattle, a lower tier team in my opinion. Their only win is against a really bad Tampa Bay team, so take that with that as you will. Moving over to Sunday here, I do apologize. It should say Sunday 2/23/2020. I still marked it Saturday for some reason. But moving over to that Sunday slate, of course, if you're playing DraftKings, you can play full main slate, all 4 games included all weekend. That is my recommendation. Nobody really wants to play 2-game XFL slates, but hey, that's what FanDuel offers for some reason. They think that's beating the industry, and that's an industry standard. I don't understand why. It's terrible. Don't play DraftKings till they get their act together on that. Main slates for the XFL should be 4 games, considering there's only 8. This is every single weekend moving forward, but I digress. Sunday, 2/23/2020, we have New York Guardians playing at St. Louis. New York, of course, a team looking really bad on offense right now. Benched Matt McGloin after a horrific performance in 2. St. Louis is returning home after a loss against Houston. Houston probably the best team in the league, if not one of the best in the league, and St. Louis gave them a run for their money in week 2, so they are a solid team overall. And then the final game of the slate, the final game on Sunday at 6 p.m., we have DC playing at LA. DC, again, one of the best teams in the league, the only other 2-0 team in the league, playing at Los Angeles, a team that looked pretty weak over the last couple of weeks, but I do think will get better, especially with Josh Johnson playing quarterback and getting healthy. With all of that said, how did week 2 shape up? What are our week 2 leaders? I did, for the first category here, keep in mind, this is really hard to find stats on the XFL right now, and even beyond that, the XFL was reporting stats very odd. They have like net offensive yards, net passing yards. Landry Jones threw for 300 plus yards, but on the XFL's net yardage is less. I don't really understand what's going on, so we have to kind of dig and find the stats. Instead of running back percentage of snaps, which I could not find for week 2, I just did a category here of running back carries and targets, so you're kind of getting a total opportunity here in terms of scoring for running backs. Curtis Artis-Payne led all running backs with 19 for Dallas last weekend, had a really solid game. Matt Jones and Christine Michael kind of split it down the middle for St. Louis last weekend, a very run heavy. Both of those backs had 17 total carries and target combined. That 17 number was also shared by Pumphrey for DC, another running back that's kind of splitting carries in a backfield, but nonetheless still got the third, or I should say the second most amount of opportunity in terms of carries and targets too. And then finally here, Jay Patrick for Tampa Bay. He had 16, another guy that kind of came out of nowhere. Smith is their lead back apparently, but the most amount of carries, opportunity, targets, all of that came to Patrick for Bay. In terms of wide receiver, tight end targets, I combined them this week because of the guy that's number one here. He is a tight end. I think technically he's listed as wide receiver on some sites. Nonetheless, Parham for Dallas, he had 11 total targets, tied with Pearson L for St. Louis, who also had 11. Cam Phillips, big receiver right now, doing a lot of damage in terms of fantasy football for Houston. Everyone thought it was Sammy Coates. Right now it's Cam Phillips for 10 total targets last week. Nelson Spruce, the man, the myth, the legend, the leader in almost every stat in terms of receiving in the XFL right now for Los Angeles, had 9 targets in week 2, followed by D. Tompkins for DC, a guy also having 9 targets in that very, very good DC offense. Moving over to wide receiver, tight end target percentage, the number one guy here, Keenan Reynolds for Seattle, had a massive 44% target share. So that is one of the largest numbers I think we've seen in a long time in terms of NFL and XFL. So he is eating up a majority of the targets for that team. Cam Phillips for Houston, already mentioned him as a high target guy last week. For Houston, had a 32% target share percentage, a very, very high, solid percentage there to look at. Pearson L for a team that does not pass the ball much, did for St. Louis have a 29% target share in 2. Parham, already mentioned him for Dallas on the last stat there, 27% target share for Dallas. And then Nelson Spruce, one of the leaders again in every category, 26% into target share percentage. So all good things here, guys, that you can kind of look at. Again, these are very, very, very new statistics, very minimal stats to go off of. You can see how drastic things can change. Patrick, for example, for Tampa Bay, came out of nowhere, had a couple carries week 1. It was all the Smith show, and now Patrick is the guy to Tampa Bay. So be careful here, but nonetheless something we can look at moving into week 3. So what is the outlook for week 3? Well, I've listed a couple things here. Running backs, again, remain largely unpredictable. I already mentioned Patrick for Tampa Bay, what he has kind of done for Smith. We saw Christine Michael kind of double his carries from week 1 after a poor performance. So you got a little bit of an up and down here at the position. Again, I'm sticking to this position as I did in week 1 and week 2, and that's I'm going to pay way down. I'm going to mention that later. But we've had slow starts and solid finishes all together for Landry Jones and Josh Johnson. I think these are good things because these guys are kind of the key players, the guys that were put out there as the top quarterbacks. They may not finish the year as the top quarterbacks. Nonetheless, it's good to see Jones and Johnson get it going towards the end of that game, kind of shake off some rust. Understandably, they did not play for a couple of weeks in terms of preseason and leading into that game. There's no significant variance among top keys. I wanted to mention this because, yeah, you have guys that can go off for 30, but largely if you can get a guy that's 20 points, he's only within a couple of points of the top guy in the league for that given week. So if that's the opinion, you can pay $1,000 more for a quarterback versus a guy that could finish second or third and only be a point or two behind him at most. So just keep that in mind. The variance is not that great. With that said, it's still important, in my opinion, to pay up at the quarterback position. Week 2, we had 4 quarterbacks finish with 175 passing yards or less. So there's a bottom of the barrel, and then there's a top. I would stick to that top tier, pay for them. They've all jumped up in price, but it's worth it in terms of daily fantasy football to make sure you are exposed to those high-scoring guys. Those low-scoring guys, there's really a ton of risk, not a lot of upside with them right now. Tampa Bay's offense, speaking of not a lot of upside, they're easily the worst in the XFL, and that's a lot considering how bad the Guardians were. But we've had a couple weeks of Tampa Bay right now. I would stay away from them in terms of a lot of their skill position players unless the price is right. We'll get to but they've had 0 offensive touchdowns. Will this last? No, this is not going to last. They're going to score some touchdowns this league. Of course they are, and guys are going to, perform for them eventually. But right now, they're not looking good on offense. Strategy remains the same. Pay up at quarterback and wide receiver. Try to find value and pay down at running back. More importantly, watch week 3 games. I mentioned watch 2. Same thing here. Not only is that good for in terms of understanding the league and which players are excelling, which guys are standing out, but more importantly, it's sports league. Let's keep this going. It's a fun league. It's fun for daily football. So I'm going to try to speed things up here. Let's jump into the reason why you're here. Let's talk about my favorite plays, my picks for week 3 XFL. We're going to start out with the quarterback position. Nothing has changed other than I swapped who I like more this week. Cardale Jones is my number 1 quarterback for the week. He's 10,800 on DraftKings, $20 on FanDuel, playing at LA. DC, the Defenders are a huge favorite here, understandably, even on the road at -8.5. He's 10-8. He's expensive, but you do save about $1,000 coming down from Walker, which I think is a good thing. But overall, Cardale Jones has been very, very solid. Back-to-back solid weeks. Week 2, he was QB3, had 270 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. He continues to push the ball downfield and has shown the ability to run. Week 1, we saw him have 9 rushing attempts. Both those things are key for fantasy football in terms of picking quarterbacks, so that's one reason I do love him. And overall, Cardale Jones has been good. Pro Football Focus has him highest graded quarterback both week 1 and week. Good things in terms of his performance overall. I do think the thing that's really holding him down from massive, great performing games is the fact that they're a great team and they're killing teams right now. So if he gets into a competitive game, what could happen here with a better LA team on the road, we could see a bigger performance than 2021 to put up. LA's defense, though, is a good spot for quarterbacks. Another reason why I'm comfortable paying up and playing Cardale Jones versus some of the other guys. They're averaging, I mean, you're talking 2 weeks here, so things could drastically change, but they're giving up 290 passing yards and over 2 touchdowns a game right now. Walker has killed them. We saw Landry Jones be the first quarterback to 300 plus passing yards against them. All good things. The defense for LA looks very vulnerable to pass. I do like Cardale Jones at 10-8 on draft, special $20 at FanDuel. Moving over to another guy, a similar guy to last week, and that's Landry Jones. 10-6. You're saving $200 from Cardale Jones on draft, saving $1 on FanDuel at $19. Playing at Seattle, another guy here, another quarterback on the road. Dallas is a 4.5-point favorite, so not as drastic as, nonetheless a road favorite playing in Seattle. He had a slow start to week 2, his first week back. He's healthy now, but he did have a solid finish. Finished I believe the game with a winning drive of 5 for 5 passes, 55 threw a score there or something. Nonetheless, he finished the game very strong, came into his own towards the game. Week 2, 305 passing yards, 1 touchdown, so not the greatest performance in the world, nonetheless was still very solid. Air raid offense, I talk about it every single week for Dallas. You just need time and that offense is going to start clicking. Saw that last week with 40 passing attempts, nearly 6+% of their snaps were through the air. Good things for the quarterbacks that are going to play in that offense. He's the first quarterback exceeding 300 passing yards. That's a bonus on DraftKings, something to look forward to for a guy that's not really rushing the ball. So he personally has to exceed, get that bonus. He's not going to give you much with legs like a lot of the other quarterbacks. He's expected to only get better here with that offense and experience in that offense. Bob Stoops, comfortable with that coach, had an excellent college career. I just think they need time to click here. He just came back. He's healthy. Let's see how this develops. And I think he's going to have lower ownership. Really don't like what he did last week. They're loving Walker. They're loving Ta'amu. They're loving a bunch of other guys except for Landry Jones. So I think it's a good opportunity here. Let's see what he can do against the Seattle defense. Moving on to the running back position here. I'm trying to, again, keep the price way, way, way down. These guys are not elite running backs. Who is in the XFL, really? But I think we can get an opportunity to save some money here. Christine Michael, $5,200 on DraftKings, $13 on FanDuel. Really good price if you're playing FanDuel, at least what it seems to be a very good price. Playing at home versus New York. St. Louis is a massive favorite here. New York has a solid defense from the first couple of weeks since I've watched. It's just their offense has put them in bad spots. Nonetheless, Christine Michael, week 2, 15 attempts, 38 rushing yards, so very, very poor performance in terms of an output and rushing yards per carry, but 2 receptions, 2 targets, 22 receiving yards. Team's only carry came inside the 10-yard line in week 2 came from Christine Michael, so they're giving the ball near the goal line, which is good. St. Louis's offense style is it generates a lot of opportunities, which is a good thing for 2 backs. Keep in mind, Christine Michael had 1 less carry than Matt Jones last week. Matt Jones is much more expensive. Matt Jones had the better, basically was the only performer in week 1. But this St. Louis offense favors running backs. They lead the XFL in total plays, and the majority of their plays are run plays. You're looking at a 55% run ratio right now for their offensive plays, which is crazy. You don't even see that in the XFL for heavy run teams right now. So St. Louis can, based upon the fact they're putting out a ton of plays and the majority of those plays are run plays, 2 backs can excel in this offense. I do believe, at least right now. Heavy favorite right now, too, at -10. I typically like home running backs that are big favorites. XFL is a different story, but we're going to, I guess, stick to that trend right now. Playing right into the St. Louis offensive run strength, though. I think if they're going to get up big, they're going to continue to run the ball with multiple backs. Christine Michael's going to get an opportunity here, and he saves you a ton of money at 5,200. You don't need a crazy performance, but if he can get into the end zone, if he's getting those red zone carries, I like Christine Michael. Moving over here to something that makes me want to vomit. He is very cheap, and I don't know if he's going to do well, but I'm hoping he will. Butcher his name also. This isn't a good sign. Jax Patrick, if I pronounce that right. We'll just call him Patrick. 4,400 on DraftKings, $14 on FanDuel. Price is more on FanDuel. That's why I like Christine Michael. But $4,400 on DraftKings, hard to pass up for a guy that's getting opportunity. At least he did in week 2. Playing at home versus Houston. Houston, of course, on the road is a big favorite. So for Tampa Bay, though, Patrick is not really in a great spot in terms of a playing running back, home running back that is favored. Nonetheless, week 2, he had 14 attempts, 73 rushing yards, 1 reception on 2 targets, and 18 receiving yards. So nearly had 100 all-purpose yards on, I would say, a 50-50 split in terms of carries with Smith. Smith's supposed to be the lead back, but we saw Patrick come in and play a lot last week. Good things here for a cheap running back. Slightly higher usage than I already mentioned, Devian Smith at $2K less. So you're saving $2,000 going down to Patrick. He saw all the attempts inside the 10-yard line. I talked about that for Christine Michael. Well, Patrick's he got 3 of them last week. Their offense sucks, but he's the guy that's apparently getting the offensive inside the 10-yard rushes right now. I already mentioned to avoid the Tampa Bay offense, considering they're running multiple quarterbacks. They don't look very good on offense, but the price and usage here work for a guy if you're trying to save money. I'm giving you a truthful answer here with Patrick. I've tried to build lineups with the guys I'm going to discuss, and these are the ways that you can build with the guys I'm giving you. It's very, very difficult to fit expensive receivers. You need to save money at running back. I think Patrick gives you an opportunity to get some production out of the position without completely punting it. You're hoping for 10 plus touches here and a cheap score, and then he'll exceed value by a ton. So the position to really sort through, really find your groove in, is wide receivers for the XFL. This is where the money is made in DFS. I'm going to stick with Nelson Spruce. I already talked about him. The man, the myth, the legend, leads every statistical category in terms of receiving for the XFL. Came right over from the AAF and did basically the same thing. He led the league there. He's leading the league here. He's $10,900 on DraftKings. He's more expensive than our quarterbacks. He's $20 on FanDuel. He's more expensive than our quarterbacks. I still think he's worth it. Playing at home versus DC. LA is a big underdog here, plus 8.5. I do like that, though. I think that hopefully keeps the ball in the air more. Not that they don't throw the ball a ton, but again, you're playing at home. 8.5 point favorite. Keep the ball going. Keep the ball in the air. Last week, he had 6 receptions on 9 targets, 89 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. That was kind of a down week compared to week 1 in terms of targets, yards, and total receptions. Nonetheless, he found the end zone twice, including some red zone looks, which you got to like. 24 plus FanDuel points. DraftKings points each week so far. Good things. Very solid. Most reliable wide receiver in the XFL. I already mentioned this. He leads the league in targets with 24, receptions with 17, reception yards with 181, and he has 2 touchdowns. All good things here. Majority of his snaps are at inside receiver, and DC is a good defense, especially against the pass, but if they're vulnerable anywhere right now, again, we're talking 2 weeks worth of data, they are struggling a little bit at inside receiver. Nonetheless, I do like Nelson Spruce. I think he's head and shoulders above all other receivers in the league right now. So you're playing talent, you're playing guys with opportunity, and he fits that mold. Beyond that, a plus 10% Pro Football Focus wide receiver cornerback matchup. Still young stat there in terms of Pro Football Focus, but good things. You like to see that to be positive. Josh Johnson is back for them. Didn't lead to more targets last week, but it should get better. He's a good quarterback, NFL experience. I think that's a good sign for Nelson Spruce. Moving on to a cheaper guy here. I'm a little bit out of order because I struggled. I put together these players based upon lineups. I'm giving you guys that you can actually build together. I'm not going to just give you the most expensive guys in the league and say, hey, have fun. So this is actually a set of guys that I do think you can fit into lineups. DeAndre Tompkins for DC. You need a guy you compare with Cardell Jones. I think Tompkins is your guy on the cheap, although I do like all the other receivers, including Rodgers and Ross. Tompkins is $5,700 on DraftKings, $19 on FanDuel. Again, playing at LA, so you're going to the other side of the ball here. DC is a big favorite at 8.5. Last week, Thompson looked good. He had 6 receptions on 9 targets, 92 receiving yards, and a touchdown, and that's his first week back. He was injured, a foot injury week 1. Listed as wide receiver 4 on the depth chart, should move up. He had a big opportunity, had a lot of opportunity last week, so I think he certainly should move up. I mentioned already, XFL debut was week 2. He led DC in target share at 24+%. All DC receivers are in play. Already mentioned that, but his salary stands out as a super value for them at $5,700. LA defense, mentioned that earlier. Their defense is struggling versus the pass. Gave up 305 yards last week to Landry Jones. Should continue to do that if given the opportunity versus Tompkins and the DC receivers. Pairs easily with Cardale Jones. Makes it work. Makes your lineups fit together nicely. Go with Tompkins for DC. Final set of receivers I'll give you here. Keenan Reynolds for Seattle. This is a little bit of a scary pick, and I will give the reasoning here, but $7,400 on DraftKings, $17 on FanDuel, playing at home versus Dallas. Seattle is a 4.5-point underdog. Again, I like that for receivers. He doesn't have the best quarterback in the world in Brandon Silvers. Nonetheless, last week he had 3 receptions on 8 targets for 87 receiving yards and a touchdown. He's inefficient right now. I mean, 3 receptions on 8 targets isn't that great. He only had a couple week 1. And this is due to his quarterback play. But the targets remain high. He has 15 total targets across the first 2 weeks of the season. He had a crazy 44% of the target share in week 2. Multiple big play chances. I mean, if his quarterback was anywhere above average, he probably would have had 2, maybe 3 touchdowns last week. And that's what he offers, big plays. He is a high ceiling but a low floor. He's a wide receiver, of course, and he's tournament-only play, in my opinion. I'm only playing tournaments in the XFL, but he's certainly a tournament play. Brandon Silvers, I mentioned, is the quarterback, and Seattle is clearly willing to throw the ball downfield to him. They're forcing the ball downfield. Silvers is taking shots, and they're taking shots to Reynolds 44% of the time. Looks good on paper. They just need to connect. Silvers plays a little bit better, and we can have some big games by Keenan Reynolds. Last guy I want to mention here, quasi tight end receiver Donald Parham for Dallas, $5,300 on DraftKings, $16 on FanDuel. Another lower tier in terms of cheap salary guy that I think you can make work with your lineups this week. Pair him in your Landry Jones lineups playing at Seattle. Dallas is a 4.5-point favorite on the road here. Last week, he looks like the most consistent receiver in that air raid offense. 5 receptions, 11 targets, 76 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. Still priced very reasonable at $5,300 in my opinion, and $16 on FanDuel. 17 total targets to start the season. Again, the most reliable target share receiver, I believe, on that Dallas squad. I do like him a lot. Targets increased with Landry Jones. So again, good things. You had a better quarterback come in, targeting this guy more. Cheaper price tag in terms of salary. Heavy pass offense. We saw 40 attempts in week 2. I talked about that for Landry Jones. They passed the ball a ton. Parham is a part of that. He's, I think, the downfield threat for them. And Landry Jones connected with him a lot. Again, pair him with Landry Jones. Cheaper price tag here. He makes it work. And so that really wraps up week 3 DFS for the XFL. Those are my favorite picks, guys. I think you can build lineups around, but some other random plays here. If I go anywhere else for quarterback, I would go with a running quarterback in Jordan Ta'amu, quarterback for St. Louis. James Butler is the expensive running back I might pay up. He has straight scores in straight games. Rashard Ross, Eli Rogers can play all DC receivers. Cam Phillips is the best receiver right now for staying away from Sammy Coates. Alonzo Russell, another cheap guy you can go with for St. Louis. Reese Horn for Tampa Bay. Cheap guy, but putting up production for a Tampa Bay squad, even among a couple quarterbacks. And Jeff Badette for Dallas. He's probably their best receiver, but he's playing a lot of underneath routes, so take that with as you will. And so we've made it to the finish line. I do apologize again for the length of these videos. I know we're going on about 25 minutes here. I will do a better job next week. I'm going to split these videos up, shorten them down, make them more digestible, but I do hope you guys do find these videos helpful, useful to you guys for the XFL, for week 3 of the XFL season. If you guys enjoy these videos, if you find them useful, do me a favor, please make sure you hit that subscribe button for No Huddle Fantasy Sports channel. It's the easiest way to help support the channel. Make sure you give these videos a like, a thumbs up, all that good stuff. Share them if you can, and go ahead and follow us on Twitter at NoHuddleFS. As always, thank you guys so much for tuning into these videos. Thank you so much for hanging in there for these longer videos. I wish you the best of luck, and I hope to see you atop the week 3 leaderboards.